Hello, my name is Mark. I'm a concept artist and illustrator working in the entertainment industry, and here I'm going to show you how you can easily design a medieval noble. So first, I started with this character design with a simple silhouette block-in because I really wanted to create an iconic but simple and effective silhouette. So creating a a triangle shape, pointing upwards, triangle shape for the figure always suggests stability. So that's why I went with this overall shape. And as a next step, I just created a sublayer and I quickly started to block in the colors, what I wanted. So I used really saturated colors and for the first time, and I separated the whole figure into two main parts. The first part is middle section, what is much more contrasty and much more darker, and the second part is the guy's cape, what is a bit more bright and saturated. And I also wanted to add a hat, so this way the central, much darker part could emphasize the most, the brightest point on the character, what is his face, and all the lines are heading towards his face, so pointing his cape's direction, and the middle section's direction is all pointing up to the face, what is my main focal point. So I'm just, as you can see, I'm not really zooming in much. So if I'm designing a costume, usually I just I try to simplify the character into more abstract shapes, and because this way I can progress from the bigger elements and the bigger, more graphical things towards the smaller stuff, what are patterns, clothing materials, stuff like that. So I decided to use a really simple background, but I didn't want it to go too much overboard with it. So I imagined this is like a medieval duke who visited some kind of Middle Eastern city, or maybe a North African city, maybe Morocco or Gibraltar or something, to do some business. So I wanted to use those more earthy, more desaturated colors, also not just to suggest that environment, but also to give an opposite to the more saturated colors and vivid colors of the cape and the overall clothing of the guy. So after I had the environment colors plugged in, I quickly went back and started to update the colors of his clothing, because the environment, of course, affecting all the clothes with the bounce lights from the sand below, and so I slowly adding more details and more highlights and shadows, but I'm still not really zooming in. So now I'm flattening down the character more and flattening down the background as well. Usually I do this after every major step, because after working with too many layers, it could get really confusing and really hard to handle. So and it's much easier to refine the silhouette of the character this way if I flatten it down. And I also started to add more gold and jewelry and those things. What could be the sign of richness and nobility, sort of things. So if you're designing a historical clothing, you have to keep in mind the social status of the character. What is behind it. So and even 100 years ago, uh, expensive fabric and clothing. Even today, clothing is the symbol of social status, and it wasn't different. It wasn't different 100 years ago or in the medieval times. It was even more the sign of social status. So um, I constantly creating sublayers and pushing the darks and the lights a bit with overlay layers and to give it and gradually zooming in a bit more to add more details. Usually I'm progressing with uh, I try to solve everything with a really zoomed out stage, and then after I can't really go in further, I zoom in just a step further in, and then moving forward. I like using the smudge tool as well. What I'm doing now. Uh, it's because it gives sort of a painterly feeling, and you can also use all the painterly brushes with the smudge tool as well. What you can use with the simple brush, so you can create really hard wet oil painted feeling things, but you can also do like really smooth um, uh, smudging and color blending with it. So it's a really nice tool. It's really easy to overuse it as well. So be careful with it. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out the shape of the cape and how the actual forms and shapes are working. What is my actual pose? Where he can hold his other hand, and probably he's having. Yeah, I felt that hand is a bit weird, so it would be cool to have a sword in his left hand. I'm always going back to the as I'm progressing further towards the details. I'm always going back to refine the silhouette a bit more, and I try to also revisit some proportions as well, and just strengthening the overall lighting with an overlay layer. I imagine that it's sort of a much more reflective uh, fabric. Adding the highlights on an overlay layer is pretty easy. I know some people are using the brush blending options, but I prefer to keep everything on a separate layer, or um, most of the time, most of the times on a sub layer, simply because it's much easier uh, to delete back, erase back from it, or even put a layer mask on it, or just simply change the opacity if I feel it's too much. I just feel I'm much more in control with if I'm putting it on a separate layer. But I'm not worried about that much uh, about the changes that much. So if I'm happy with a result at a certain stage, I'm just flattening it down and moving further. What I'm trying to keep separately uh, is usually the background in cases like this is the character itself, the background, and sometimes I add certain effects or lighting effects or shadows, like for example the character shadows, and I keep those separately as well, just to be easily adjustable. Yeah, I'm now I changed I changed the character, make it a bit more. I made it a bit more lighter and made some adjustments, like changing the overall proportions with the warp tool again, and also changed the image um, aspect ratio. I just felt it could be better to make it more like a bit more like an illustrative piece. So almost like maybe like a sketch for a book cover or something like that, instead of just a basic character piece. So now I'm picking, basically I'm picking all the colors from the piece itself and from the character itself, and I'm using the lasso tool to create some harder edges. It's also nice to have a variation of different edges inside your character. It makes it look more lively and more dynamic. And what I've done previously is I lightened up the character, the character's values. So I pushed it somewhere between, let's say 80%. So 80% of black is my darkest value, or 80-85, and my lightest is probably around 10%, except the rim lights on the character. And I'm usually doing this because it's much easier to work with really balanced mid values, and then go back and push it a bit further with some final contrast adjustments or overlay layers on the shadows and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm jumping back to the background just to refine it slightly. I don't really want to do anything with the background, so it's just simply just to show kind of a mood or the overall colors of the environment, just to suggest where the whole story is happening. And now I went back to add more details with the lights, some jewelry, some embroidery on the cape and on his belt. And yeah, what I said earlier, I'm always going back and refining the silhouette and some proportions as I just resized the head, because I felt it was way too big even for a medieval guy. They wore pretty big heads back then, but I just felt it's just it just looks a bit weird. So yeah, flipping the canvas back and forth, it always helps. And this is the first time I'm zooming in more. I felt the neck is way too big, so and it's slowly getting together. I mean, it's still pretty sketchy, but from far you can see pretty much what's happening, and all the other details is just a matter of time. We have sort of a general understanding of the character. We can instantly know that sort of who is he, what was his social status. he has a traveling cape, he has a sword, he has jewelry, so he probably is a really high class traveler or something, or maybe some kind of a merchant. And that's pretty much what my goal was. And now, what I mentioned earlier is I'm starting to push the shadows a bit more on an overlay layer, and that's where I achieve the contrast what I was after, just adding bits and pieces and going back to the background as well sometimes. Using the lasso tool there as well, just to refine the walls, just to have some sharper edges there as well, and to break up the sort of graphic of the background. Yeah, now here's the, I'm flattening everything down, and this is like the final adjustment stage, and I'm just painting on top of the flattened layer now, just to refine the character's face a bit more, the sketch stage, adding a bit more highlights everywhere. It's just pushing the details a bit further. Still keeping it loose and painterly. With keeping the whole image like zoomed out all the time, it really helps you to focus on the overall image instead of getting lost in the details. I'm an absolute detail freak, so I really like to go into like super minor stuff. Like, but I learned that it's really hard to handle everything that way. So at this stage, I would love to go in that and detail the heck out of that brush what we what we have on his cape, but it wouldn't be good for the illustration, so I just keep it really zoomed out, adding some extra glows. Yeah, checking the composition, how it works. Color balance is always a good tool to unify your colors, because you can change your shadows and the hue of your shadows and lights really easily. Slightly blurred everything except the character, and now going back a bit and adding some more hard edges to my focal point, more harder lights. And it's time to go to add some textures. So yeah, I collected a bunch of images, what could be from the same era, and I don't wanna over texture this whole thing. So I don't wanna do like a photorealistic something, but sometimes it can save you time if you incorporate photo elements into the illustration what you already have. I mean, sometimes it's best to use just references and paint everything, but for the sake of this demo, I thought I can show this this technique as well. So basically, I just used the guys. You can see, and there's not much left from the original photo what I pasted in, but it still gives that sort of realism what is sometimes really hard to achieve, especially. I mean, it's not that hard, but it definitely takes way more time than just blocking in uh, certain details into the original sketch and adjusting them and repainting them to your needs. You see, I don't leave that much from the original image, and I always paint over almost everything. So, but I kind of like that sort of visual noise what you can get from these materials and from these patterns, but it's really hard to achieve with painting. Just adding certain details. So you see, I already had that hand there. I'm just basically clarifying and adding another level of details with the photo textures I'm pasting in. I'm just adding bits and pieces just to slightly push the level of realism of the character. I still would like to keep sketchy and a bit cartoony, so I don't want to push it like too much further. Yeah, adding the patterns. Usually I use just soft light or overlay layers and desaturate the pattern what I use. This way I don't lose any painted information below, but just getting a bit more details what I had before. So yeah, I'm creating like a bigger pattern. Distorting it just to sort of match to the cape. Yeah, and really turning it back just to have a bit of visual noise from far. I don't really want to see the whole pattern. I'm still interested in the brush strokes and the painted areas. What is below that? So. Yeah, but I kept pretty much everything. So just slightly pushed it. So now it's time to paint on top a bit, just to integrate the textures more, and just to bring back the feel of the original thing. So adding some micro details like the chains and some highlights to the face. But these are really the final touches, so I'm quite happy with it. wanted to do with I missed something from the background a bit, so I just quickly grabbed a picture from Google and I pasted it into the background, put it in onto an overlay layer, just to have a bit more detail, but really subtle. And then flattening the image, and it's done. I hope you learned something, and thank you for watching.